we're talking about Triple Whale
Yeah.
and how they do attribution.
Yeah, so the world of attribution and multi-touch is pretty much solved right now. The two biggest options being Triple Whale and Northbeam for e-commerce, exactly. Now, with Northbeam, they're pitching themselves as a true multi-touch attribution solution. This is how much credit everything gets, which I don't necessarily believe in. It's like trying to weigh the dreams of a butterfly, right? This is a fictitious thing. Let's measure it.
Well, okay. So the way I think is working and talking about
Yeah.
an alternative to it, which is is that they stack impressions. Like they have your Facebook account, or to say Facebook, each channel has this many impressions, or has this impressions, or like whatever it is, and they add it up. So if maybe the aggregate journey of all your customers have impressions, 20 of them are on Facebook, 50 of them are on search, 50 of them, 30 of them are on display, then kind of what it's able to count because of tagging, it's able to count and look at all the impressions and say, okay, well, the contribution of Facebook is 20 and search 50 and play is 30, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not sure that that's true. I think it's useful to know. But saying it's a $100 kind of value on the conversion, saying this, social made you or Facebook made you $20 and search made you $50 and display made you $30 of kind of transaction. I'm not sure it's exactly true. I think just because something got the most impressions, maybe got 10 times more impressions, doesn't mean that it was the most persuasive, right?
Sure.
Or should be given equal amount of credit for persuasion as it is for. And I think that's how most.
Yeah.
My team's thing is doing different. It's basically assigning correlation, translate into the contribution in terms of that these things are giving you. So how much is this contributing to the sale, not just impressions, but rather as it contributes to trades or is correlated to the overall sale.
Yeah, and I think the big issue that I find with is not that information is theoretically incorrect for any one particular user. To be fair, Triple Whale is another option that's doing that, and the size of their primary customer tends to be a little bit different, and the application of the data is a little bit different. I've described it as sort of an IBM versus Apple type of thing. But here are two big issues that I see.
Triple Whale?
Yeah, Triple Whale does have that built in. Yeah. So they're both kind of trying to solve that same attribution. My problem with how they're solving it, the way they approach it, is basically that might be true for that day's spend on that platform or that mix for that impression, for that user, for that transaction. The problem with that is twofold. Number one, that doesn't tell me anything about what future people are going to do. And number two, that also sort of assumes that the final touch point is an actionable thing. Like if I use this example a lot, like if I want to make up a new car company, the solution isn't to hire 10,000 car salesmen in the warehouse. That's not going to sell more cars, right? So finding the ad that had the best CPA today and then spending a bunch more on that ad isn't the way that I'm going to keep getting new customers in at a certain. So the problem I have with that is retroactively looking at some period of time to say, how did each ad do in isolation doesn't really tell me how to manage my media mix. And I think the value that a lot of marketers I see get out of these is it tells them, well, what ad in my Facebook account is doing really well? Or how much is Google really contributing? Which is interesting, but it only holds true as long as you don't move any variable. As soon as you do, it changes dramatically. And generally speaking, most of these people are using that as information to say, great, spend it more on this ad set or on this campaign. And then that effectively immediately destroys the entire media mix. And so you are looking at out of context data historically to plan future action under the assumption that that mix of credit kind of holds true. And in my experience, when I've seen other bespoke solutions installed, which I've seen 6 and 7 figure solutions trying to install, what ends up happening is whatever modeling makes sure that whoever runs every department that's on that report look good, that's the model choice that the company's using, right? Because at the end of the day, most marketers, the primary job of any marketer is to make, I think, is to make the person that hired you look good so that you don't get, and maybe get a bit more money next time. The goal of a business is to grow and to understand market opportunity and all. I think that was one thing that when you were showing me what you guys were doing, how much more exciting that was, because instead of being a retroactive report card, it was more of a suggestive machine that dynamically changed and accounted for that different weighting and the changes in the marketplace to deliver a specific business objective instead of just how do I make my Facebook ROAS look as good as possible so I get more spend.
So a couple things, I think. I guess one thing is that you're dealing with a model makes new data predictions, or does recommendation engine, which right, but it's still based off of it's based off of a couple things, based off of what your mix has been. Then we also bring in environmental data so that we can kind of anticipate other trends.
Yeah, like market forces and all that other stuff. Tremendously important for what it's worth.
Yeah.
Most marketers aren't accounting for that.
Right. And so then you go back and explain what happened. Oh, there was, whatever, this change in the market, but some of them you can predict, some of them seasonal, some of them you can.
We're moving into a recession after a COVID year. Right. E-commerce, if you look at it, we're basically going to face a situation that's going to more be less like 3 to 4 years where it's completely irrelevant to look at last year's data to understand future behavior.
Yeah. And something like if your major competitor always comes out with a major push during this time, that's going to okay. So there's one, but you are always dealing with historical data. Models create new data, prediction, inflation, are less essentially. Hey, you can continue to spend platform and get continued positive, or hey, you should dial back on. But other thing was, so cynical business say that marketing isn't, and they'll say that because there's just not enough clarity on marketing, and marketers themselves are trained in thought models and things like that that are useful for making decisions in the world of marketing, but aren't tied to kind of the major financial, major kind of drive the rest.
Right.
And everyone's been trying to solve the kind of budget is.
Right.
So I think everyone's trying to solve that for a long, long time. the idea of modeling that data is a mixed model. But what's useful now is that, I guess, democratization of big data, cloud computing, and things like that, machine learning, have made it more accessible for ours to kind of say, you know what, just give it all. Give us your stuff by the minute. Give us all your impressions, all your clicks, give us all your sales data across all the platforms. Give us all the economic data. Give us all the environmental data, and process it. And we can, we and other companies have developed a capability of kind of building models off of that that get us closer to being and closer to making real decisions about how we allocate our funds, better predictions, etc. And also the big data portion of data, which means that we can get vision in, like MMMs have been like TV's working for you, like radio's contributing at this much, the internet is contributing at this much. I'm like, that's it, right?
Yeah.
So, but now using kind of similar approaches, different machine learning, etc. But the whole big data element of it, you can look down to the campaign level across the board, and you can look across platforms. So what we do is, like, you can bring in linear data, and you can essentially have a DR model running at the same time as a essential model, and it's all, you get in the results across the board.
And it's more like a report card at that point.
Yeah, but you can also get it down to the channel level. You can get it down to, like, you can get it down to the campaign level, and and you can put in your out of home buy, and you can get kind of, and that's kind of because so you can get all that now because of our ability to get an hour of cloud.
They're providing all that information, and what I love about all that information too is one is giving context and clarity to what you're seeing, and it also means that you're able to get to, I will say this, you're able to get to an actionable insight, where I think the biggest pain point I see of most of the multi-touch attributes, pretty much any one of them that I've seen so far, and why when you showed me what you guys were doing, I was just like, this can't be real. And then apparently they came back like 3 times. They're like, no, we can't poke a hole in it. Like, this is thing. And I loved is that primarily what I see people doing is being reactive for some essence of self-preservation. And
well, here's the thing. All you ultimately, like, so let's go back before digital advertising, before any of the kind of
dinosaurs roam the earth.
Current, there was no right. Like, so, like, say you're buying TV, right? All you can do, you have no, like, you're like, look, I'm not accountable for the product. I'm not accountable for the shelf space. I'm not accountable for the weather. I'm not accountable for all these things.
Yeah.
That kind of affect the ultimate sale of this competitive environment, right? And so all I can do is buy impressions. So your best job that you can do, buy those impressions efficiently, try to get as many of them as you can, get it on the right audience,
right.
Get your timing correct so that you're hitting people in times when they're trying to hit people, in times when they're either very attentive to the message or about to make it right. Like, so, like, that's it.
Yeah.
But all you're doing is, like, I can buy this bucket of stuff as efficiently as possible. Your decision making was all about that, right?
Yeah.
So, and to a certain degree, this is what I meant about marketing not being strategic in a lot of organizations. There are people, CFOs, heads of strategy, like, whatever it is, setting the media or setting the entire marketing budget based off of just, like, do it. And there's a CMO showing me all this data-driven stuff, but it's not real strategy. You know what I mean? It's not the goods.
They might say, "Oh, we're going to do 2 million, so you have 1 million to spend. So we have marketing efficiency against revenue of X."
Yeah, exactly. So ultimately, the entire marketing department is often locked into executing someone else's strategy that they haven't even.
Yeah, and
they're just trying to do it as efficiently as possible, right? Or as well as possible, kind of within that. But they're not actually setting the global or the umbrella strategy,
right?
So, goal or outcome of hopefully like this and ways of thinking. Elevate those conversations, everyone in the chain, because buyer to more of a seat at the table.
Yeah,
major business.
And I always say to people like I was just at this thing called Geek Out in Nashville, and Nick, guy running it, was like, I know a lot of media buyers. We don't let our media buyers talk to the client. I was a nerd. You should not have let me speak to the clients, and I definitely ruined a lot of conversations, especially with Omnicom and a lot of other places I didn't know. Should have been good. But then he asked me, like, why do you like to talk to the client? And one of the things I said was that being really good, I make this analogy. Some media buyers are hunters. Other people are farmers. I know most media buyers at agencies are excellent hunters. Put on their war paint. They can go out into the wilderness. They can come back and they can kill something. They can bring home purchases. They can take credit for conversion. The problem is, if they have a couple of days or a couple of weeks where things aren't going well, their livelihood is at risk. Whereas I know other folks are more like farmers. And to be fair, society was built on the concept of farming, because now one person doing a little bit of work contribute to making 100 people fat, right? And I guess my point to that being, I think a lot of media buyers, especially at agencies, and it's not to speak ill of agencies, I just think that's what most media buyers tend to learn, are taught to value their work on KPIs that don't directly relate to the success of the business. And I think what's great about this is the idea that you can understand, maybe it's better for me to get a 2x ROAS but deliver 3 times as many impressions as a 5x ROAS, because that number doesn't actually mean success. Like, your job as a performance marketer is rarely ever spend X money at X ROAS. And that might be what's listed on the sheet of paper. That has nothing to do with the growth of the business. My point to that is, I love how you're talking about that democratization, bringing other people to the seats at the table, because I don't think it's that media buying is dead or that these people are wrong. I just think that if you steer somebody in the direction of, like, this is how you can contribute to the incremental growth of the business, this is what that looks like, that's tremendous. And then you ask a chief marketing officer, a VP of marketing, whatever, show me how the best I can do to bring incremental lift. They're going to throw their hands up and say, well, we don't know how to do that. And, well, that's one of the things that I loved about what you were showing me, which is, I think when I was describing it to somebody else, it's like, this is how much opportunity for lift we have in specific channels.
Yep.
Like this, you've got 5 different ways you can increase spend. This is the one with 5% confidence, maybe we can do 80% more spend. This one with 80% confidence, you can do 10% more.
Yeah.
Right? Like there's those, you get those options, right? And so I can, as a marketer, or as a CMO or VP or whatever the nice title is.
Essentially, we haven't phrased it this way. Like you're saying, there's a risk factor kind of built into how aggressive you want to be. And actually, our recommendation engine has that. I guess it does have a built conservative recommendation, like go this far, or an aggressive recommendation this far. We're just not sure.
Yeah,
or we are sure it's going to like we think it's going to be great.
Right.
But you're taking on a higher risk.
Yeah, and it's not this is the ad that got the ROAS you liked. It's this channel executed at the level of proficiency that it's currently being done
Right.
has 10%, 20% more opportunity for growth than or we could spend more here
Yeah.
and be within the allowable bell curve of our target KPI as a brand.
Right.
And the ability to have a machine that spits out a suggestion like that, and then you can take that and be like, okay, somebody's job might be, all right, now how do you take this? They take search or display or TikTok or YouTube or Facebook and add 20% without setting it up in flames. That's an executional job, and that's a good role to have. But that's a fundamentally different conversation.
It is, and it's also, I mean, one of the reasons. There's a couple of reasons why we have the. And if you're always taking the aggressive recommendation, is because you're taking more risk, might be moving faster towards X. Well, you are moving faster towards but you're also changing what's of the model more aggressively. Variation, which gives it more stuff to say. Oh, that doesn't work,
right?
Or that does work,
yeah,
right? Like, okay, like when the mix looks like this, that's pretty good. Makes it an aggressive recommendation, right? So when the mix looks like this, that doesn't work as well, right?
Yeah.
But like you need to take some of those risks. They're again confidence level recommendations.
Exactly.
But it the model more aggressively. So what Facebook break thing?
Break things quickly.
Something.
Yeah.
Fail quickly, break things.
Yeah.
Whatever. Move fast, break things.
Yeah, I think they call it. The last thing was build to break.
Okay.
And move fast, break things.
Yeah.
Yeah, all that stuff.
Whatever. And but the idea with a model is essentially just make a bunch of wrong decisions, make a bunch of right decisions. Hopefully, you're making more right decisions than wrong decisions. And the model's trying to steer you in that direction, so that you're kind of figuring out and moving quickly towards what the allocation is.
Yeah, and I think that there's, if you look
and
at
that's why so there's the recommendation engine in the dashboard.
Right.
So here's how to optimize your spend, and it's fairly consistent. Adjusted.
Yeah, and what I love about that is the person running the company or like the team that's assigned to make something happen might say, what I need to do is every 6 months replicate what I did in 12 months prior to that. I know a leather company, that's basically their business model, and so far it's working well. They're now mid 8-figure business. Mazel tov to them. What that means is now the team behind them can go to that recommendation and say, these are the 4 or 5, if that the decision tree that's going to get me in a way that I've got the most confidence to get there. And then they could also say, well, we know that we're going to come up on a surplus. For instance, we're moving into Black Friday, right? We know we're going to have a surplus of consumer intent. We might be willing to take a bigger risk here because our baseline is going to be higher anyway. So the ability to go into that machine and make that broad, like not week by week planning, but almost like epic by epic, right? Like H1, H2 type planning, and say, H1, we're going to replicate all of last year in that 6 months. That's our goal. Then I can get out of the weeds of audience or creative style. Like that stuff is way less meaningful when you're trying to move mountains.
I go up on still an advocate and when data driven value. With it. I think that's really important work. That said, as we're running these models, like down to platform and campaign. Of course, the campaigns are doing something. Each campaign is targeted.
Sure.
Something like that. But it's like just more important to test stuff and just get data to analyze. Really shifting. I'm personally just by watching the way we're talking about the campaigns and the priorities. Rising limited in our focus on, which is surprising to me. And I think it takes the audience work back, creative and messaging, and makes it kind of critical there. But budgets, of course, ultimately targeting audiences like that based off your making.
Sure.
But it's like we're focusing on the campaign optimization itself more than on what's practically happening.
Yeah, no.
Actually, our kind of our lead data scientist doesn't like AI for that reason, which is like AI is going to give you an answer, but you're not actually going to understand what it's doing,
right?
Or why.
Yeah, no. And there's other people that are like they'll sacrifice performance for insight every day of the week.
Yeah.
And at some point, it's like you have to learn how to like work with the machine, right?
Yeah.
You just get this. It's like a herd of cats. You just like this clear and west.
Yeah.
Like that's what you have to do, right? And it's interesting that you say that because I've been having that conversation, especially with Facebook.
So
for years.
We present these things and we walk through the models, but we will always have multiple meetings before trying to go like, what are we saying and why and what's going on? Run little side models. We'll try to like figure out like why is this the recommendation?
Yeah. And I would say this in my experience, what I've been able to figure out with this. Curious how you feel about this.
Yeah.
Say I've got on any given platform, let's say as a for instance, I've got 5 platforms.
Yeah.
Every one of them's got, say, 5 campaigns, 25 total.
Yeah.
And each one of those, let's say, has 5 audiences.
Right.
For the purpose of this conversation, we've got 125 variables. Addressing the best execution platform level for any one of those audiences means I might be able to, at best, make a 1 or 2%. Addressing which one of those 5 platforms to spend more on, just as a throw that lever or pull it back, might make a 10%. And so the way that I look at it now, the way that I've taken that in is say, my objective is not to maximize the value of any platform. My objective is to stabilize the platform so that it is as projectable in its outcome, so that as I make that mix, there is a less of an impact when I shift. So if I go from 1,000 a day to 1,200, that's not moving 125 variables, right? That's moving like 5 things. And so it becomes infinitely more stable. So, and the other side of that too, on a complete other end is, if I'm addressing 125 different parts, how many different types of customers am I bringing into my? How many different people am I trying to solve for? Like my salespeople, think if it was the real world, and I've got a million different types of billboards, a million different carnival barkers, bringing in a million different types of people into my. How am I going to optimize my landing page? How am I going to figure out my email flow or like figure out LTV? If I have to solve 120 different problems, I might get a 10% gain someplace else, and then impact is -3 because I've hurt 20 other things. So just in this thing, I think it's so interesting you said that because my view on it has shifted more and more and more to Facebook is a lever. Google is a lever. Search is, or email is effectively a lever. And if I know that lever performs at X, as few moving parts as possible, then when I invest more or less, I know that I've got a pretty good idea of where I'm going to net out across, and then I can measure the halo effect. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So I just think like executionally, like I'm seeing that as an in the weeds marketer. And then it's funny to hear you say that basically as a guy that's like big strategic background, give me a picture. I remember one time you told me like 10 years ago, whatever, when we were in the office with the show, when they were filming, they were like, give me a picture of a brick. I'll sell it. Just give me enough, like give me like 3 months to figure out the strategy. I will make $1 million on this picture of a brick. It stuck with me. I don't know if like whatever. I think it's that day we were trying to like do non-processed food. Came in with like peanuts.
Right.
Anyway.
It wasn't that much bravado. I know what I was saying was to give me a picture of a brick, because I said something like, I bet you this is what I said. I don't remember exactly.
Sure, yeah, it has evolved over the years of me retelling this.
Which is, if it give me it's like the targeting and the platform. You know, I'm still big on targeting, but like the targeting and the platform and the capabilities of ad tech, right?
Sure.
To find the right audience and convert them is so powerful that I was saying, like, it doesn't matter what the image is so much. I gotta have a picture that can drive some clicks.
Sure.
But like something.
Yeah.
But and we'll be able to kind of go out and find the audience and in a way that's, you know, probably it was confidence in advertising. I'll do it very strong.
Yeah, absolutely. But I'm just saying with that all is that, like, I feel like what we're getting to more and more is, one, the AI is, and two, we're finding more and more, I think, that my theory is, as these digital marketing platforms mature, we started with 5 different urgent care centers. Now we've got a cardiologist and a brain surgeon, somebody that does just pediatrics. Like, all of these things have a really great specialty. If you lean on them to just do that in your media mix, it becomes infinitely easier to map out a lot of different.
So let me ask you, because our modeling stuff is outside the world of cooking,
Which I love.
Education, and our favorite platforms or whatever ones we'll use are
whether we like the way they treat us or not.
Are trying to solve for a post-cookie as well. Right?
Yeah.
Destroyed by kind of, right?
Sure.
And now is repaired. But so our about our model, right, that we don't need to worry too much about the platform. They are only useful to us, or we're not useful to us. We're only able to tell how they're doing relative to how another, or a campaign, how it's doing relative to another. Right?
Sure.
So, or even one digital or linear, like, so it's all a relative comparison.
Yeah.
Right. So,
which is, by the way, light years ahead of the conversation we're having with almost anybody else trying.
Cool. I mean, it's just I say that. It's me.
Just saying, because I think a lot of people are trying to meet the needs of the marketer, instead of meeting the need of the business.
Right.
And I think you guys are solving for the needs of the business. Right. And that gives direction to the marketer instead of feeding the need of the marketer, because your client isn't the agency trying to keep the brand. Right. Your client is the brand trying to find the right execution. The right decision.
And frankly, our client isn't even marketer. Like, like somewhere near.
Yeah.
Or it's like kind of, it's a CMO.
It's a C-suite, but it's not an execution.
FO. Cool.
Yeah.
And that, but the thing is, it does give execution. Anyways, I forgot.
Well, you were saying just, that these other folks, that you're looking at incrementality, and you're looking at how each platform, how they.
Oh yeah. So if you're, Facebook to a certain degree, you can run mentality because you have different campaigns, right? You can do a relative thing with. And so they have some variation that they can model against. They don't actually know how they're contributing very much compared to all the other data sets, which are like, if they're running TV, Facebook's running around and think it's doing great because it is judging its performance versus have a TV campaign going.
Sure.
But then you turn the campaign off and Facebook's trying to model that. They're like, why did we stop working?
Sure,
right?
Absolutely.
And or etc. So that's what's going to be hard for these platforms. They away from cookies and towards the kind of modeling that they're doing and must do, because they don't have the visibility into it. I mean, even agencies have a hard time because agencies are segmented. Like
you got
your
your Google
performance
agency,
yeah,
your
exactly.
email agency, Facebook agency.
So even an agency itself, or like this agency buys our TV, but this agent, whatever, right? They don't often have visibility into all the different stuff. So even if an agency typically were going to try to model it, they wouldn't have that visibility.
Yeah.
And I don't know.
It's like how difficult
Poor
it is.
agencies.
Yeah. I remember running agencies, and like there was a period of time where like there's about a 6 or 9 month period where I basically would bring Criteo was on every client,
Right.
and my clients at the time were like insurance companies. I don't name them all out, but like international like coffee companies, pizza delivery companies, sneaker brands, insurance companies, movie, children's entertainment. I mean, at any one time, I think I was managing 6 or 7 of these 8, 9, 10-figure brands, right? Performance marketing. And there was Criteo at the time was a really heavily focused retargeting. That was like the bread and butter. And getting them to come into the conversation and just share all of the data side by side and do like hold out smoke tests and all of that kind of stuff was extremely telling in that as soon as they opened up on one, we could see how they were evolving across everything else. And it was ultimately, I think they made a strategic shift in how they do marketing, not because of anything I was doing, but I think there is an effort of, when I was talking before about that self-preservation, going in, I always say attribution is how much credit for everybody's work can I take by myself. And that ultimately, if you're not communicating in this big way, or not able to track the results in this big way, you're getting down to a place where there's a conflict in the business relationship. Me as an agency running your Facebook, there's an extreme conflict for me to share and potentially look worse if I decide my real goal is Facebook is doing okay, but your CRM is crushing. Your email team is excellent. Really, maybe the best move for you is let's run Facebook more or less as a lead generation to your CRM team and let them just crush. Maybe the value of an email address is $50 and I can get you in for $12. Maybe it's half as good as everything else. So that 12 is only worth $25. You're just doubling your money. Or if I work really hard, I can get like a 1.3 ROAS. Objectively speaking, one of those makes me look a lot worse on paper because I'm not seen as closer to the money. But the client that's looking at it, if I try to look as good as I can and be as close to the money, they see that as detriment to overall performance. And that's why I think it's so exciting to see these brands dive into the North Beams and Triple Whales of the world, because they're starting to understand how some of that works. And I've noticed the conversation really switch from platform level ROAS to marketing efficiency. How much of my overall spend do I adjust towards marketing? But even with that, it's still this retroactive self-preservation. And so, like, I'm super excited about, and I guess we'll have to, at some point, show kind of what this looks like. But super excited about the idea of presenting a dashboard that is almost agnostic.
Okay, let's talk about the dashboard first. Yes, I'm going to let you kind of your idea because it's flattering. But but the idea of a dashboard is also just something I want to pause on, because what we're creating is new data sets. Data, right? You have your bench, engagement, financial data made. Data. It's all, you can think of them all just rows.
Think of this giant Tableau report.
Yeah. Well, I just table.
Yeah.
And then we're creating new tables, and those new tables have all the model, and then have those drive additional data sets, which are just tables of data. Now, what do you do with the tables of two different things? One thing is, typical thing is build a dashboard, right? Show all the data and show all the recommendations, show all the relationships between all this stuff, show what's driving what, etc., in a dashboard. So that is something we do. Also, you can just say, okay, let's port it into your dashboard, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you have your tab, build it into there. I think we can also, it's just data sets that we can probably just pile into Triple Whale as well as field.
Sure.
So that, and so, but it basically doesn't matter what the visualization is. And then the third thing is, like, again, it's just data sets. You just port it over into your databases, right? And your data science with it, information off of these things. You can do, whatever. We can throw it out, the different recommendations out to different agencies so that they're getting into their like we can do just tables, right?
Yeah.
So we don't sell, we build and are happy to, but I like to focus on the fact that we're selling this new data sets. Rather than dashboards, although ultimately.
Sure. Yeah. I think what it almost feels like is what you're doing is taking a lot of the intuition and guesswork out of the role of CMO and turning that into more of which investment do I want to make? And that investment comes with a correlation and a contract.
Yeah, and I think that's perfect because that's also how people do it, which is some people rely on it more than others. It's in terms of all the things there are, or just like they're hires that are making decisions on, move this 5%, great, done.
Yeah,
okay. It's like, so I think people are. Oh, it's some new insights and some new ideas.
Yeah. And I think that's a really interesting way of solving the problem because basically instead of giving somebody a list of answers, which ultimately...
Well, we give answers.
Yeah.
We give overview, we give here's the analysis.
Sure.
Analysis.
Well, I'm just saying...
Give answers.
Yeah. I'm not saying you don't give answers. I'm just saying that when you rely on that platform to give you an answer, it also means that now that's just one voice in the room.
Right.
Versus saying, we'll give you that, but also what we're doing is we're allowing you to evaluate the directional decision making that you have so that you can understand how aggressive you want to be and also like what risks are going to get you to the place that you're trying to get to. Like I had a boss once, we were doing, it's like a 9-figure SaaS brand, right? It was like a 7-figure monthly profit target on paid social. And he told me that if I tested this, I was right. I had to win more than every 60 to 90 days. I wasn't working hard. Like I needed to, if I won every 3 weeks, then I wasn't doing my job. Like I had to take a big enough risk that it moved the needle so much. And I think that there's this ideology of, in like an investment banking and a lot of other places, that fewer strategic moves of higher confidence can move things far more meaningfully than 1,000 little things that ultimately are 1% changes. We have this idea of like Kaizen, like 1% better every day, but it's not realistic in the world of media buying.
Well, can actually visualize. So you can optimize, like we have this visualization, which essentially, if you have everything optimized perfectly, it's everything to as much as
Gotcha. Yeah.
Everything, all the different platforms.
Like a singularity.
All the different campaigns are contributing the same degree, right? And everything's fully optimized, right? But the issue with that is and that's where a model will take you. It is like a perfectly optimized campaign. A way to talk about that is a $5 CPA, right?
Sure.
Like, so we'll just optimize towards a $5 CPA, and everything's contributing perfectly. But you're only working within the data that you know, right? And if you've always run 4-channel, always run these 4 channels, a range of this spend, then it will say, okay, within those 4 channels and within this range of spend, that's going to get you to the introducing a new channel, saying, what if we quadruple spend on this?
Yeah, like if my goal is 6
Yeah.
and I hit 5 for 6 months in a row,
Yeah.
it's a liability. Like, let me get to 5.5.
Yeah.
Like, let me spend more.
So that's exactly why we have the aggressive. Like, we just need new data. We need something to go outside the bounds of no, so we can say, oh, well, that one really doesn't or that really does work. Otherwise, a model will just optimize you toward within the world of data that it does.
Yeah, I guess it'd be interesting.
But actually, I'll say the environmental data does push model outside of boundaries because there's stuff that has never happened before.
Sure.
Inflation is something that's happening right now for everybody. How does that affect
Supply chain issues and cost of money and recession, COVID, and buying behavior, right?
Yeah.
Like, I guess, we can talk about this theoretically, and maybe it'd be great to another time sit down and kind of show things. Like, this all sounds well and good. I've seen some of this, but it'd be interesting, just like, what is some of the outcomes of this that you're seeing? Because one of the things that I was telling people, hopefully not speaking too much out of turn, was that you're also sometimes changing what the definition of success and KPI actually is for. And I think that also fundamentally changes the trajectory, and hopefully for the better. And the one case you showed me, it was absolutely for the better.
Yeah.
But they just really, like, success for us isn't doing this. There's no ramification of us doing this other thing well. We just got to do this other thing, focus on this, and this will just come along right along with it. We're riding the wave. Right. And so I don't know if you could talk a little bit about that, just like that, the results of this kind of thing, what that might look like, and maybe we'll have to sit down another time and kind of show what this looks
like. Yeah. So it's kind of neat because it's driven by just trying to figure out the economics of a business mathematically. So we're kind of blind to we know what they are, but we're trying to model out the relation. And we find out things like your business is actually 2 businesses because of these 2 different ways that people can give you this product.
Sure.
Turns out that you have 2 totally different correlations, totally different relationships in your marketing activity, and kind of flat in terms of how you think about it. Maybe it drives this conversion rate here and this here, but it's actually 2 totally different businesses. Right?
Yeah.
Or your business is totally different during the weekdays than it is on the weekend. Marketing relates with them differently. And it's actually 2 different models, right? I think the one that you were, turns out your marketing has no relationship to your sales. Or not no, but like
limited. The correlation is far less than you think it is.
It's far less than you think it is. But it turns out that there's all these other things that are driving sales. Think of it as kind of location, foot traffic. There's all this other stuff. But what your marketing does is driving market share. So like your market share goes up and down in a very close correlation. We're able to kind of snap the model in on that one. So everything will happen, right?
Yeah. And when it's working, like what is that definition of success in this?
It's just we tend to operate at
of your ability to kind of project what the next move is going to look like and be more or less right with the suggestion and recommendation. Got it.
Exactly. Yeah. So, and it's also another way to look at it is 90% true about what happened. About like what things correlate.
Yeah.
What was good. Because what we're showing is, so the model's got to be 90% accurate, or whatever, as accurate as it is. because as it's showing everything that's contributing to that, it's not actually showing it contributing to the actual sales. It's saying it's contributing to what the model says the sales would have been. So they just need
Yeah.
because everything's stacking up to what the ideally if you overlap them there.
Yeah, and then the net output of that is, I remember one of the things was just a dramatic reduction in the variance.
Oh yeah, so that was again, that was just an outcome of better visibility into what was working.
Sure.
And it was kind of surprising to see, but a company's got a variance in their daily CPA reduced by basically 80%.
Okay. So the bell curve,
Yeah.
instead of being like this,
Yeah, the bell curve was like this, and it's also
it's a pillar now.
Yeah,
Instead of
and it also was the average better. So
Yeah.
it was
more efficient,
more efficient,
far less variance.
Yeah, and more control.
So you basically,
but ultimately it's manual, and that someone has to look at our recommendations or look at the various indicators that we have, like a spend factor, how much you're spending this versus thing. We have potential, which is you can spend here, or how that we have just our recommendations. But like someone's using those as like dashboard, right?
sure,
They still have to then go over into their platform, make the change.
they still have to be able to execute.
Yeah. Well, they don't have to be able to. They have to, right?
Sure. Yeah.
Like they have to choose to. They have to look at it. They have to go. All right, I'm going to make this change now. And I think it has to pass a gut test check.
Has to make sense.
Has to make sense.
Sure.
Has to. I think you have to get them out of thing then on your data.
Sure. And also be possible too. Like it can't just be like push bottom funnel by 30%. Like I might not have 30% more bottom funnel.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
But it counts.
Yeah. So it does. We've had governors. So, but ultimately, it's a person's decision.
Yeah, and what I love is I think the big win out of this is, at least that use case, is all the fun stuff we've been talking about results in a far more stable and desirable primary KPI output of the business at scale, omni-channel, in a way that is projectable.
Right.
And now you can start to take a look at marketing as a lever to push a specific business objective. And to the end of the day, is kind of what it's there for anyway.
Yeah, I mean, yes. And interesting. Talk a lot about but the model models against any streaming KPI. But you can also do it against things that are don't stream. And that means that we can move farther up the funnel. I don't know. You can look at site visits as mid funnel, but you can also go even farther up. Change brand stuff. Brand study.
Maybe like a Nielsen, something like that coming in. Yeah.
So that's kind of cool because it's your everything like your conversion pixel. Where are you placing your conversion pixel on?
Sure.
On the funnel, right?
Yeah,
so,
and all these like little micro conversions.
Yeah. So we don't have any pixels, but like if we can get a streaming data set from an upper funnel API, then we can.
I think it might be, for
model
instance,
against that activity as well. Because you say that's what marketers basically do, right? Is they have to But like brand has value, like it just
Yeah.
does. And it purchase and will and all this
Yeah.
stuff matters. So nice to be able to buy line stuff. CFO quarter goals does matter. It does.
Yeah. I think at some point we'll have to dive in and see what all this stuff looks like. But it's numbers. It's fun thing. But for people to actually be able to take a look at it and understand sort of what that looks like
Right.
and how that is. But I think that's a lot for people to take in, even at a surface level. But maybe we can kind of wrap it up with sort of like what is the ethos of like what is sort of the elevator pitch of what it is that you're trying to ultimately do, and then also kind of like how can people get in touch with you to talk about it? Because I feel like it's great to hear all of these things, but if you also understand the what is the driving mentality behind something, then you kind of get where they're coming from, right? Like I was telling you about how North Beam presents itself as this solution, whereas Triple Whale presents itself as this solution. IBM is the fastest, strongest, best number in the world. Apple is just trying to help you enjoy life, and they do that through these fun devices that are easy to use. Simon Sinek, Golden, all of that fun stuff. But yeah, I think that would be a great place to kind of wrap things up with is what is sort of the 50,000-foot level of why you were trying to do this, or the elevator pitch of what you're ultimately trying to solve for.
Yeah. So I think what are we trying to do? And we're trying to provide kind of useful kind of signals. Level down from that, or smart investment decision. I think a level down from that is all this stuff. So I think we're trying to make it easy to get kind of robust that can actually drive your business. Easy part is like modeling takes a little bit of time, and it's kind of technical to run it, but it's nothing as just difficult as doing all that tagging. Like, like all that tagging that's within MTA is just a really, really time consuming and a lot of room for human. Also puts a lot of burden on the client.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Like for us, we're just like, kind of give us access to your reporting or have your
We'll do it.
Your APIs that are.
You don't need to spend 6 months with your dev team to
tag just like send all the just you set up the pipes, we'll start playing with it. And then you get a model pretty quickly, and the model's like, okay, well we're pretty confident that these are some good results. Let's start running this thing and let's start making some decisions on it and see business. And it's just lighter weight and easier. I think that's kind of what the fact that we can do it, the fact that the democratization of big data is available, and that we systems.
Yeah, very. I was suspicious, and then I saw all this stuff, and I was like, "Wow!"
Yeah,
I think I wrote back like 3 days later, and I was like, "Dude, this is really cool."
So I think it's kind of, I guess what maybe we're aligned with Google is that we're trying to help people organize their data in a way that's useful, right? Like we're just that's what we're doing. It turns out that we can do it in a way that helps.
Yeah, I love that. And for folks that are watching this, how can they get in touch with you? First off, why not how they get in touch with you? And two, like, what do you need somebody to look like that's actually good for them? Like,
so
we're talking about big data here.
So that's exactly the thing. So there's a certain number. We said if you're running a about 5 million a year at about an average $10 CPM. I mean everything. That will give you enough impressions to be able to model and get and pay.
And if they're running at like 15, 20, 30, it just means they need a greater, in CPMs, it just means they need a larger level. But you're netting out of that the impression volume data
So
and enough conversion information to get an understanding of machine learning.
So the
I
cost
think that's my phone. Yeah.
And so the cost out of you just say you got to be running $5 million.
Yeah.
A little more nuance than that. And also, if you're running 20 million maybe or more, then we can tip and you're not running like a gazillion. You're not running a gazillion different creatives. We can usually give you creative level. Well, essentially how many impressions, how much spend.
Yeah, and it's like what's the data set per asset? If you have a million assets, then you've got a very small data pool for one.
Exactly.
Yeah, maybe even if you have a lot of assets, the picture could be summing it up into Group A, Group B, Group C. Yeah, and one of these has LTV of X, one of these has conversion rate of Y.
Yeah.
Are you trying to buy cash flow? Or are you trying to buy profit margin today? Are you trying to do customer acquisition? Those are all different things that really matter.
Right.
It's cool.
That's that's what a company or Sepulveda Partners. We work with marketing data often in the Tiernan space of telecom, and
Nice. I'll link. I'll put a website.
but the product's called the
Okay. Let's say that again.
with another
MMTA. Gotcha. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. All right. So I'll make sure that we can link to that somewhere in the description of the video so that people can find it. But anyway, I appreciate it. I think this is. I always love a chance to work.
Yeah.
And you guys did it.
No, we really did.
It's really cool.
And it's working. It's surprising. And platform.
Yeah, whatever it ends up being, we'll figure it out. All right, I'll kill this.